Imagine this. You wake up and the sun is already too high in the sky. Your alarm didn't go off. You're already 30 minutes behind schedule. Your heart is hammering against your ribs, and the day hasn't even truly begun. You sprint to the driveway, but when you turn the key, you get nothing but a hollow rhythmic clicking. Your car is dead. Then your phone buzzes. It's an email, the kind that makes your stomach drop through the floor. A project failed, a client backed out, or a personal crisis just landed on your lap. In those few seconds, your reality fractures. Your brain snaps from, "I've got this," to "I'm sinking," and suddenly the room feels like it's running out of oxygen. We have all been there. We've all felt that rising tide of panic that threatens to swallow our logic whole. But here is the hard truth. Most people think staying calm is about being indifferent, or worse, just ignoring the chaos and hoping it disappears. It isn't. You aren't a statue, and you aren't a robot. Staying calm is actually an active, aggressive skill. It's about retraining your nervous system to stay online and functional, even when the world around you is going offline. It's about finding the eye of the storm. Today, we're going to stop letting the chaos dictate our heart rate. We're breaking down the physics of panic, why your brain betrays you in high-stakes moments, and I'm giving you the 3 essential steps to regaining absolute control when everything is going wrong. Why is it that the moment we need our brains the most, they seem to leave us hanging? When the stakes are at their highest, when the deadline is looming, the bank account is low, or the relationship is fracturing, you would think that evolution would have gifted us with a superlogic mode. Instead, we get sweaty palms, a racing heart, and a brain that feels like it's filled with static. To understand how to stay calm, you first have to understand that your brain is currently operating on software that is roughly 200,000 years old. You aren't weak for panicking. You are technically a masterpiece of biological engineering that is simply misinterpreting the modern world. At the base of your brain sits a tiny almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. This is your body's smoke detector. Its only job is to scan the environment for threats. In the prehistoric past, this was a literal lifesaver. If a rustle in the bushes meant a saber-toothed tiger, you didn't need to contemplate your options. You needed to run, hide, or fight. When things go wrong today, even if that wrong is just a nasty text message or a flat tire, your amygdala doesn't know the difference between a social catastrophe and a physical predator. It sounds the alarm all the same. This triggers what psychologists call the amygdala hijack. The moment that alarm bells ring, your brain undergoes a physical coup d'etat. It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline, effectively cutting off the power to your prefrontal cortex. This is the logic center of your brain, the part responsible for complex decision-making, emotional regulation, and long-term planning. When you're in a state of panic, the CEO of your brain has been escorted out of the building, and the security guard, the amygdala, has taken over the microphone. This leads us to a frustrating paradox. You cannot think clearly because your body genuinely believes you are being hunted. Your pupils dilate to take in more light, your muscles tense for impact, and your breathing becomes shallow to prepare for a sprint. In this state, your brain loses its ability to see nuance. Everything becomes black and white. It's win or die. It's the end of the world or total disaster. This is why, when you're overwhelmed, you can't remember where you put your keys or why you walked into a room. Your brain has deemed that information non-essential for survival. The predator in your life might be a missed mortgage payment or a failed exam, but your biology is treating it like a physical assault. Because you are stuck in this survival brain trap, you lose the very tools you need to solve the problem: creativity, patience, and perspective. You're trying to solve a 21st century problem with a Stone Age survival kit, and the friction between those two worlds is what we call stress. If we don't learn to recognize this trap, the stakes are incredibly high. When you operate from a place of survival brain, you aren't responding to life, you're reacting to it. And reactions are almost always messy. Think about the last time you were at your boiling point. You likely snapped at someone you love, not because they did something wrong, but because your brain perceived their voice as excess noise during a threat. You likely made a rushed mistake, hitting send on an email you should have drafted, or making a desperate financial move, because your brain was screaming at you to do something rather than do the right thing. This is how cycles of chaos are created. You panic, you make a mistake, the mistake creates a new problem, and the new problem triggers more panic. This is the fast track to burnout. Burnout isn't just working too hard. It's the physical and mental exhaustion of living in a perpetual amygdala hijack. Your body cannot sustain that level of high alert forever. Eventually, the system crashes. It is vital to realize that this isn't a character flaw. If you feel like you're losing your mind when things go wrong, it's because, neurologically speaking, the human part of your brain has been temporarily sidelined by the animal part. The problem isn't the chaos outside, it's the lack of a bridge between the alarm and the logic. Most people spend their lives being pushed around by their biological triggers, feeling like victims of their own emotions. They feel guilty for their anxiety, which only adds more stress to the pile, creating a secondary shame spiral that makes the original problem even harder to manage. But once you understand the survival brain trap, you can start to see the glitch for what it is. You can begin to say, my amygdala is firing right now. I feel like I'm being hunted, but I'm actually just late for a meeting. That tiny gap of awareness is where your freedom lives. Understanding this biological reality is the first step toward reclaiming your power. You have to learn how to tell the security guard to step down so the CEO can get back to work. Knowing why you panic is step one, but knowing how to stop it in its tracks is where the real transformation happens. To move from the survival brain back into your logic center, you need a reliable, repeatable framework. We call this the three-pillar framework. These aren't just positive thinking exercises. These are physiological and psychological interventions designed to interrupt the stress loop and restore your power. The most common mistake people make when everything goes wrong is trying to think their way out of a panic. You cannot reason with a brain that thinks it's dying. As we discussed, the amygdala has already cut the power to your logic center. Therefore, you have to talk to your body before you can talk to your mind. You have to send a signal to your nervous system that the predator has left the room. The fastest way to do this is through your breath. Your breath is the only part of your autonomic nervous system that you can consciously control. It is the manual override switch for your heart rate and blood pressure. The technique, the physiological sigh. Discovered by researchers like Dr. Andrew Huberman, this is the most rapid way to offload carbon dioxide and lower your heart rate. It consists of a double inhale through the nose, one deep breath followed by a tiny cap inhale at the top, and a long slow exhale through the mouth. Doing this just 2 or 3 times forces your heart rate to slow down. The technique, box breathing. Used by Navy SEALs to maintain composure in combat, this involves inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and holding for 4. By focusing on these patterns, you are physically forcing your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, to take the wheel. Once the shaking stops and your heart rate stabilizes, the fog in your brain begins to lift. You've earned the right to think clearly again. Once your body is calm, the next hurdle is the distortion of scale. When a crisis hits, your brain engages in catastrophizing. It takes one bad event and stretches it across the entirety of your future. A missed deadline doesn't just feel like a missed deadline. It feels like the end of your career, the loss of your home, and total social isolation. To combat this, we use a psychological tool called temporal triangulation. This is the art of zooming out to see the problem from the perspective of time rather than the intensity of the moment. Ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. Will this matter in 5 days? Usually the answer is yes, but the intensity is already lower. 2. Will this matter in 5 months? By this point, most daily crises are merely a footnote or a memory of a busy week. 3. Will this matter in 5 years? Historically, 99% of what we panic about today will be completely irrelevant in 5 years. By forcing your brain to look through the lens of the future, you shrink the problem back to its actual size. You move from "this is an existential threat" to "this is a temporary inconvenience." This perspective doesn't make the problem go away, but it removes the life or death weight that causes the panic. You're no longer drowning in the puddle, you're standing over it, looking down. Now that your body's calm and your perspective is clear, you face the final boss of panic: overwhelm. When everything goes wrong at once, we tend to look at the big picture, and the big picture is terrifying. If you have 10 problems to solve, trying to solve all 10 at once will paralyze you. Panic thrives on the global view, calm thrives on the local view. The secret to maintaining composure during a meltdown is to aggressively narrow your focus. You must ignore the 50 things that are broken and find the one thing you can fix in the next 5 minutes. This is what climbers do when they are stuck on a rock face. They don't look at the summit, they look for the next handhold. Micro-prioritization. Ask yourself, what is the absolute smallest, most productive thing I can do right now? Maybe it's making a phone call. Maybe it's opening a laptop. Maybe it's just drinking a glass of water so you can think better. The momentum effect. Every time you complete a smallest step, your brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine. This counters the cortisol, stress, and starts to build success momentum. When you focus on the next step, you aren't worrying about the finish line, you are simply moving. Action is the ultimate antidote to anxiety. Anxiety is a state of unresolved thinking, whereas action is a state of resolved doing. Imagine these 3 pillars working in sequence. Your car won't start and you're late for a presentation. Pillar 1. You stand in your driveway and perform 3 physiological sighs. Your hands stop shaking. Pillar 2. You realize that while this is incredibly stressful, in 5 years, you won't even remember the name of the presentation you missed. The end of the world feeling vanishes. Glossosestur. Pillar 3. You stop trying to figure out how to fix the engine and the schedule simultaneously. You take the next smallest step. You call an Uber, then you call your boss. By the time you're in that Uber, you aren't a victim of a bad day. You are a person managing a series of tasks. You have transitioned from the survival brain back into the executive brain. You have successfully navigated the chaos. This framework works because it respects your biology. It doesn't ask you to just be happy. It gives you a ladder to climb out of the hole, one rung at a time. The more you practice these 3 pillars, the thicker your skin becomes. Eventually, you don't just stay calm, you become the person that others look to when things go wrong. We have talked about the biology of the brain and the tactics of the breath. We have mapped out the pillars of perspective and the power of the next small step. But now, we arrive at the most critical juncture of this journey. This is the moment where theory becomes character. This is the turning point where you stop being a passenger in your own life and start being the pilot. Up until this point, you might have viewed calm as a luxury, a lucky emotional state that visits you on quiet Sunday mornings or during a vacation. You've likely spent your life believing that your internal state is a direct reflection of your external circumstances. If the day is good, you are calm. If the day is chaotic, you are stressed. In this worldview, you are a thermometer. You simply reflect the temperature of the room you're in. But here is the breakthrough moment, the insight that changes everything. Calm is a choice, not a feeling. Between every event in your life and your reaction to that event, there is a space. It might feel like a nanosecond, so small it's invisible. But that space is where your entire life is lived. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the horrors of the Holocaust, famously noted that in that tiny gap lies our growth and our freedom. The turning point occurs when you realize that you do not have to let the chaos outside become the chaos inside. You're not a thermometer reflecting the temperature. You are the thermostat setting the temperature. When everything's going wrong, when the car breaks, the debt piles up, and the people around you are losing their heads, the world expects you to join the frenzy. Society has conditioned us to believe that if we aren't panicking, we aren't taking the problem seriously. But panic is not a sign of seriousness. It is a sign of helplessness. True power is found in the sovereignty of the gap. It is the moment you stand in the middle of the wreckage, take a breath, and decide. The world is loud right now, but I will be quiet. This is the shift from victim to protagonist. A victim is someone to whom things happen. A protagonist is someone who responds to what happens. When you're in a victim mindset, every wrong thing is an attack, you ask, why is this happening to me, and how much more can I take? This line of questioning keeps you trapped in the survival brain we discussed earlier. It keeps you small, defensive, and weak. But the protagonist asks a different set of questions. The protagonist looks at the chaos and asks, what does this situation require of me, and who do I want to be in this moment? Think about the stories we love, the movies, the books, the legends. We don't admire characters because they had easy lives where nothing went wrong. We admire them because of how they looked when the world was on fire. We admire the captain who stays on the bridge while the waves are crashing over the bow. Why? Because the captain knows something the rest of the crew doesn't. The storm is external, but the ship's direction is internal. The climax of this mindset shift is realizing that your power was never in stopping the bad things from happening. That is the great illusion that keeps us stressed. We think if we worry enough, plan enough, or control enough, we can prevent the wrong things. But the universe is too big and too indifferent for that. Engines will fail. People will let you down. Plans will dissolve. Your power, your true power, is found in the realization that you have a 100% success rate of surviving your impossible days so far. You are still here. The bad things happened, but they did not break the core of who you are. When you stop trying to control the wind and start focusing on how you set your sails, the panic loses its grip on you. You realize that you aren't waiting for the storm to pass. You're learning how to sail in a gale. You're realizing that you are the captain of the ship, and while you cannot command the ocean to be still, you can absolutely command your own hands to stay steady on the wheel. In a world that is increasingly frantic, your calm becomes a weapon. It is a competitive advantage in business, a stabilizer in your family, and a shield for your mental health. When everyone else is reacting, the person who can choose their response is the one who leads. This isn't about being fine with bad news. It's not about toxic positivity or pretending that losing a job or facing a crisis doesn't hurt. It does hurt. It is frustrating. It is heavy. But the aha moment is knowing that you can be frustrated and calm at the same time. You can be grieving and focused at the same time. You can be in the middle of a disaster and still be the most composed person in the room. The turning point is the moment you stop asking the world to be nicer to you and you start demanding more of yourself. It is the moment you realize that the everything that is going wrong is just data. It's information. It's the terrain. And you are the one who decides how to walk it. As you reach this climax, you aren't just staying calm. You're forging a new identity. You're becoming the person who thrives under pressure. You are the person who keeps their head when all about them are losing theirs, as Kipling wrote. This shift is permanent. Once you see the gap, once you realize that you can choose your internal weather, you can never go back to being a victim of circumstance. You might slip, you might feel the adrenaline spike, you might even cry out in frustration. But you will always know that the control room of your mind is accessible. You will always know that the CEO can be invited back into the building. The chaos has no power over you unless you give it permission to enter your heart. And today you are revoking that permission. You're standing in the middle of the storm, looking at the crashing waves and saying, "I see you, but I am the captain here." We've travelled a long way from that initial moment of panic. We started in the grip of the survival brain, feeling like victims of a world that refused to cooperate. But you've learned that you have a toolkit to dismantle that trap. By utilizing the physiological brake, you've silenced the biological alarm and reclaimed your body. Through temporal triangulation, you've resized your problems from life-ending to manageable. And by focusing on the next smaller step, you've replaced the paralyzing weight of the big picture with the steady momentum of action. The takeaway from all of this is simple, yet profound. Staying calm isn't about being a robot. It isn't about suppressing your humanity or pretending that the chaos doesn't hurt. It is about being the most effective, most resilient version of yourself precisely when it matters most. It is about maintaining your agency when everyone else is surrendering theirs. As you move back into your day, remember this undeniable fact. You have a 100% success rate of handling your bad days so far. You have survived every impossible deadline, every unbearable heartbreak, and every total disaster that life has thrown at you. You're still standing. Today is no different. The storm might be louder than usual, but you're more prepared than you've ever been. Take a breath. Choose your response. You've got this. Now I want to hear from you. We all have that one specific mini crisis. Maybe it's a spilled coffee, a passive-aggressive text, or a red light when you're already late, that usually has the power to throw your entire day off the rails. Drop that trigger in the comments below, and let's work together to reframe it using the pillars we discussed today. If this video helped you find your center and reminded you of the power you hold, hit that like button and subscribe. We're doing deep dives into mindset and resilience every week to help you stay the captain of your own ship. Thanks for watching, stay calm, and I'll see you in the next one.